dinner. Well, we're not cooking today, but we're going to do some tasting of some wines. We're going to continue our celebration of Passover. 2 weeks ago, we did Easter and we did Italian pastas. And a couple of days ago, as a special, we made gefilte fish and horseradish fresh, and we did that in less than an hour. And it's fabulous. It was really good. Not as good as my grandmother's, but pretty close. Anyway, we're going to be celebrating Passover with our good friend Jay Buchsbaum from Royal Wines. We're going to be celebrating with some kosher wines. We'll talk about those right now, here live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Join us, won't you? This is Mark Alyn Cooks Your Dinner. And in case you were wondering, that was a kosher pizza. Next week it may not be, but this week it is. We're going to go to New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, and thank you. And we're going to talk about kosher wines with Jay Buchsbaum. Jay, welcome back to Mark Alyn Cooks.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. Really appreciate it.
Oh, we appreciate it. I have to tell everybody that I really owe Jay an apology. Last year, at the last minute, I said, "Can we make Horosis?" And Jay said, "Yeah, sure." Well, I blew it. I blew the recipe. It was terrible that I made, and I put Jay on the spot. So this year, we're not cooking. We're just tasting and drinking and talking. And I'm really looking forward to this. Even though we're celebrating Passover, I just want to make something quite clear, and that is that even though these are kosher wines, they're not necessarily just for Jewish people. Am I correct in that, Jay?
Absolutely, absolutely. And what's interesting about that is that many of our wines, I mean, here's an example. In this Bartonura Moscato, we guesstimate that 70 to 85% of the consumers on this are not Jewish or kosher or care about kosher. So, but the key is that, if the wine that is kosher is good, it's because it's good wine. If it's kosher and it's bad, it's because it's bad wine. Nothing to do with the fact that it's kosher. If anything, kosher should just add a modicum, a tiny bit of extra carefulness in the processing.
And we say hi to Heidi in Louisville, Kentucky. And the wines, by the way, are available even in Louisville, Jay? I mean, around the country?
There are a selection of kosher wines available in Louisville for sure. Yes, of these wines, of this portfolio.
The wine that you just mentioned is to me, it's like an Asti Spumante.
Yes, it's actually a version of Asti Spumante, but with lower pressure. So there is an Asti, it's made from Moscato, just like Asti is, but Asti Spumante has a much higher PCI or PSI, what do you call it per square? Pressure per square inch,
So it's not as bubbly.
Also naturally fermented, meaning that it is not, they don't put, gas in it. It's actually the natural fermentation that gives it the little frizzante, as they call it in Italian.
We always start our show with a toast. So I think we're going to toast with the same wine.
The whole show is a toast.
Huh?
The whole show is a toast.
The whole show is a toast. And if you watch long enough, I might be toasted by the end of this show. I'm going to pour some. We're pouring a Herzog lineage. And this is a rosé from Clarksburg. I'm going to put this down here. Carol, let's see if you can get that shot for us. Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that. Is that good or what? And this is actually bottled about 12, 14 miles from where Carol and I are. We're in Thousand Oaks, and this bottle comes from Oxnard, California, the kosher wine capital west of the Mississippi. So, Jay, let's do a toast. What would be an appropriate thing to say now?
Well, first of all, we make the blessing over the wine, unless we're going to spit it, and I'm not going to spit this one. This happens to be 100% Pinot Noir, and it's left on the skins for a short period of time, and that's how it gets that pinkish hue. When you had it on the shot, because of the brown cabinet in the back, it looked kind of golden, but it's not. It's really just pink.
Right.
And here we go. I'm going to make the blessing in Hebrew, and I welcome everybody to join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri
Free
hagafen.
Hagafen. Mm. Howard says hello. Thank you, Howard.
Now, what's fascinating, Mark, about the blessing for wine is that it's very different than any other blessing on foods. So, for example, when it comes to bread, it's on the bounty of the earth. When it comes to fruits, there's a special blessing specifically for fruits. So you would think it would be the same blessing for fruits in general. It's not. It has its own special blessing because wine is so so important to so many events. And by the way, this is true for whether you're Jewish or not. When you want to celebrate your wedding, whether you're Jewish or not, or whether you want to celebrate, graduation or a coming of age of any kind, what do you lift? You lift up a glass of wine and toast. Sometimes it's l'chaim, sometimes it's skol, sometimes it's cheers. So, wine is special, and so therefore it has a special blessing.
That's very nice. And one of the things that I think we're doing here on the show is with all the conflict around the world, we're educating people about my heritage, about Jay's heritage, and to show that we're all the same. We're people. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic or Muslim or Jewish, the Hindu, Buddhist, whatever you are. We're all people, and we have to learn to get along. And I'd like to toast to that.
Amen, brother.
Amen.
And sister.
Now, this is a rosé, and rosés are becoming popular again. Now, when I started drinking wine back in the 70s, I had to think about that. I almost said the 60s, but the 70s, rosé was very popular, and everybody drank it. It was just what you drank. Are rosés seeing a renaissance right now?
Oh, definitely. Actually, what's great about rosés is that they're so um, usable in so many different situations. You can have a rosé as a coiffer. You can have a rosé with a light fish or chicken dish. You can have a rosé with a really nice dessert. So they have much more usability, much more accessibility for so many reasons, and it also satisfies the palates of, a good rosé can be enjoyed by a real fine wine person as well as, a person who's just getting started in tasting and enjoying wine.
Uh, and one of the things that I like about a rosé is that you can, on a hot summer day, and we're having a beautiful day here in Southern California. It's about 78 degrees outside right now. It is gorgeous. And sitting outside with a glass of chilled rosé just is one of the highlights of life,
You
right?
bet.
All right, I'm going to take another sip. Mm. All right, let's talk about a couple of things. After we did our show for Passover last year, Carol and I had a vacation in Italy, and uh, uh, Jay set up a tour of a winery in Italy. Uh, uh, and I'm hoping I get this pronunciation, Tierra Sieta.
Tierra di Seta.
Tierra di Seta. And
Correct.
Daniel di Seta showed us a wonderful time. Now I got to tell you, Carol, where were we? We were in
Pienza?
Pienza. So I drove from Pienza to the winery
And this is all in Tuscany.
and in Tuscany. Jay, I cannot tell you how lost I got, how frustrated I got. And when you run a car in Europe, uh, it's usually a stick shift. And I'm very good at adjusting to a stick shift. I think Carol would agree with that. She doesn't necessarily like the way I point the car, but she knows that I can change gears. And um, I the language I was using, uh, lost. I was anyway.
We
Daniel
did
sent.
really well, actually.
Thank you.
We only got lost at the very end.
Yes, we got lost at the very end,
And it was the navigation
and
system.
the navigation was not working, on our iPhone. And the
And
way
just-
I got to us was I talked to Daniel and I said, "We're by the peppers." There was I guess a pepper farm, and they had sculpted peppers, a red and a yellow. Do they have a green too? I don't remember. But and Daniel's son came and got us and brought us up. We had a wonderful tour of the winery. They presented a fabulous lunch, and it is open for people to visit if you're in Italy. One of my sisters is there right now. Unfortunately, on this trip, she's on a ship, so she can't get up there. And the wine, I'm trying. What's their main wine? Their
Chianti.
Chianti, and Daniel, I think, is in charge of all the whole Chianti region, or he was when we were there. He's like
He is a
president of, yeah,
one of the right. And I think they rotate. I think at one time he was the president of the consorzio, so to speak. But some of the wines he's made has actually rated. Here's an example of what you started with about kosher, non-kosher, whatever. One of
right.
the wines that he made, all the wines he makes are kosher certified. One of the wines that he made was the highest rated wine of the entire, entire area. So, and very rare, that it happens to any winery. Of course, it happens from time to time, but you know, it's really a badge of honor. And the fact that it's kosher just meant that it was just great wine.
Well, and as we're talking about wine, and I may have mentioned this to you before, years ago, I interviewed Hugh Johnson, who has written volumes about wine. And Hugh said to me, and I think this was about 1974, and he said to me, "Wine is everything. Think about it." He said, "It's science, it's art, and it's a lot of bit of luck." Right? And he's right. And wine represents life. It's just a great way of expressing life. And I'm
It's funny. It's funny that you say that because I mentioned it earlier. When we toasted, the words in other languages are skol or cheers, correct?
right.
The toast in Hebrew is l'chaim, and l'chaim means to life. So there you go.
There we go. And you probably know the song L'Chaim from Fiddler on the Roof.
Of
I
course.
I had the opportunity. I've seen the show, the stage version, probably 8 or 9 times. I did see it once with Zero Mostel.
Oh wow.
Yeah, who was the originator of the role. Let's talk about Jay for a minute before we go to talk about another wine. Your background in wine, I mean, is extensive.
Oh yes, yes, certainly. I actually graduated college with, with a degree, or I should say a focus on accounting. And I was an accountant for the city of New York. And I'm dating myself by telling you that at that time the city of New York was going out of business. I was a fiscal records analyst, which means an auditor, basically. And I hated it. And so I went to work for a little wine company on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and then which was a kosher wine company. It doesn't exist anymore. And then I went to work for an Italian wine company. If those of you of a certain age will remember Jacobazzi,
Oh
And
yeah.
then where I really learned about great wines was working for a California boutique agency, which had really wonderful tiny wineries, only 10 of them. David Bruce and Lytton Springs and Fopiano and oh gosh, so many really wonderful wines, which is really where I learned about wines. And then after all those years, I was always a kosher consumer, even though I was selling non-kosher wines at the time. And I used to go to David Herzog and David, what do you got new? What do you got great? I want to bring some good wines home. And he would say, why don't you help us, do wines here? And that was 30 some odd years ago.
Wow.
And 30 some odd years later, there are now over 800 different varieties or SKUs of kosher wines. And I just brought just a smattering of wines from I think 13 different countries.
It's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. I have three wines. I have one wine from California, one wine from Israel, and another wine in the back there from Italy. And the, you've got wines from literally all over the world, huh, Jay?
Yeah, well, here's Italy. I'm sorry, Italy, Israel. Here's one from Argentina. Here's a Rothschild from France, from Hoppedoc. There's a Sangria from Spain, a Tokai from Hungary, a, a Shiraz from down under, and Goose Bay from New Zealand.
Oh
So
my! It's
Australia.
terrific. Now, it, um, there are certain things that need to be done to make the wine kosher. Um, and let's talk about that. The handling of the wine, the handling, and the actual making of the wine. Can you describe that for us?
Yes, actually, the planting is no different than non-kosher wines, um, except for some exceptions when it comes to Israel on when the wines can be harvested. But the primary and really the only thing that separates kosher wine from non-kosher wine is that, and this is the basic definition, there are some nuances to this, but that from the crushing of the grape until the bottle is sealed, it's all overseen or handled by a Sabbath observant Jewish person. That doesn't mean a rabbi, no blessing goes into the wine. In fact, the rabbi is there to make sure that there is no blessing in the wine, Jewish or otherwise. And that's the only difference that makes wine kosher, is that the oversight really and the handling.
Got it. What about the mashul? And I think I'm pronouncing that fairly close.
Mavushal. So, so like I said, the basic definition is from the crushing of the grape until the sealing of the bottle. But if the wine is then mavushal in between, which means flash pasteurized, then you can actually, it can be, once it is mavushal, which is flash pasteurization, which is a whole long Talmudic discussion as to why this works, then anybody can handle it. You don't have to be Sabbath observant from the mavushal process on. And what's interesting and important to mention here is that there are non-kosher wineries, and the wine is still not kosher, but that use this flash pasteurization process for shelf stabilization and for other reasons that they think enhances the wine. But we in kosher wine do it so that once it is mavushal, once it has gone through the flash pasteurization, anybody can handle it.
Um, with the 800 plus varietals uh, of kosher wines, is this a growing segment of the wine industry?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Last year there was a statistic that came out that said for the first time in a long, long time, wine consumption was down on a per capita basis. Not in the kosher business, baby. I'll tell you that. We're just getting started. People, kosher consumers are first now discovering, the different varieties and the different nuances and the different countries and places that wine is made. Also, I believe that there's a strong interest, albeit very tiny, but there's a strong interest by non kosher consumers on about kosher wines. Gee, I wonder, now that it's got a good reputation, and also especially for Israeli wines. You know, wine consumers, especially fine wine consumers, are always looking for a new country. I remember when Australia just took off, or Argentina just took off, or South Africa is now taking off, et cetera, et cetera. I think Israel is at that point where people are saying, okay, what's new, what's fresh, which country? And Israel, because it's making such high quality wines, and we've got a bunch, one we're going to taste, I hope,
We're going to taste.
separately.
We're going to taste something in a minute. I wanted to go back and suggest something, and that is that I don't think that people understand that kosher wines can be award-winning, uh, great tasting wines. To many people, kosher wine is a sweet Concord grape wine that we all had Friday nights or at bar mitzvah celebrations, uh, uh, Rosh Hashanah, other family gatherings, and that's what we were served. Uh, and it's changed from that. And do you make one of those?
Do make one of those, and that's a really old change. That change has, started occurring about 35 years ago,
Hmm.
and we're left that far, far behind. But there's an important historical perspective as to why that was true. Immigrants from all over, Italy, Spain, Ireland, who came to this country generally came from, through New York, through Ellis Island. And if you wanted to drink wine that was locally made, they didn't have containers, shipments in those days. You had to drink the local wine, which was Labrusca varieties, which was mostly Concord in red and Catawba in white. And
Right.
those were so low in sugar at harvest that they required sugar to make them palatable. And so, since that was the only local wine you could get, that's how the original kosher wines got their reputation for being sweet and syrupy. Today, of course, we make wines in Medoc from the Rothschilds, and we make wine in Shiraz from Australia, and of course, California, great Cabernets, Merlots, and even this rosé, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera.
And the 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 wines keep changing and growing with taste. Still, that Concord grape, when you taste it, it brings back memories, right?
If
You
you're
know,
if you're our age, yes.
yes, yes, it does. Well, I'm going to move the heritage Herzog lineage away. I'm going to change glasses, and this is a brand new product. I think we're one of the first to share it, and this is Carmel Black. This is from Israel. It is a Cabernet. And Jay, tell us about this before we pour some.
Well, Carmel is a very interesting story. It's the largest winery in Israel, arguably. And what's interesting about Carmel, it was started by Baron Rothschild in the late 1800s, who funded it. And really, his objective was to give the growers a place for them to put their wines and to make it into something more valuable than just grapes. And so Carmel was begun by growers. And I'll never forget Walt Walters of Zinfandel fame. Uh, oh my gosh, I'm having a senior moment about which Zinfandel it was, but um, Old Vine Zinfandel used to say there's only three things that matter in making great wine, and that is good grapes, good grapes, good grapes.
Yes.
Uh, and it was Lytton Springs Zinfandel. That's what it was. And the point is that when a winery is owned and operated and begun by growers first, you know that the raw materials that they're going to use in making wine, you can screw it up. But if you start with good raw materials and you don't screw it up, it could be really great wine. That's the case in the case with Carmel the black that you're pouring. It's Cabernet. It comes from several different growing regions in the country, but all coming together. And what's wonderful about this wine is that it's accessible both in flavor profile, but also it's also reasonably priced. So
And Tom Martin says he'd like to try some. Well, Tom, you could try it. I think it's available wherever fine wines are sold.
Tom,
Let's taste. I'm sorry,
oh,
Jay, I didn't hear you.
where is Tom? Let me shut this off.
Oh, Tom is in Connecticut.
Oh, sure. This is available in Connecticut.
Oh, good, good. And it's reasonably priced. What is the
Should
retail?
be about 30 or under $30.
That's uh, that's good. Now we've both been swirling our wine. Does that help with the flavoring, the aerating the wine at all, or is that just something that we're nervous about?
Many, many claim that and I think they're right. I don't know about how much percentage, and I'll clarify that in a moment, that aromatics are the primary driver of what you taste. And some people say it's 60 or 70%, that what you taste in your mouth is really what is going through your nose. At least at 50 or 60% of the flavor is coming from your nose. I have, you don't have this wine because I don't have your wine, but I
Right.
have a wine that comes from Sagot, which is in the Judean Hills, and 100% of these grapes come from the Judean Hills area. And it's a blend of, it's what we call a classic Bordeaux blend, Merlot, Cabernet, and Cabernet Franc. It's not made in Bordeaux, so I don't want to
Hmm.
confuse anybody, but it is made from Bordeaux style grapes. And yeah, so what you're looking for in a wine is it good? Does it look good? Does it smell good? And how does it taste? So, l'chaim to you.
L'chaim to you, Jay. Hmm. May I talk about this?
Please.
I taste berry. There's a little bit of sweet at the end. Got a nice nose. Um, this is a nice wine for $30.
Yeah, what I love about that wine is its accessibility. You know, it's round, it's soft, and even though it's a relatively young vintage, I think you're tasting the 23. Even though it's a relatively young vintage for a red wine, the tannins are soft and inviting. The
Mm-hmm.
fruit is there. I just think, and it's not overly alcoholic. You know, some Israeli wines can be as much as 14 or 15%. I think this is on the lower side of that. So, and it spent 14 months in oak, so it gives it
Yes,
a vanilla.
which I like. I like the oakiness. I'm looking to see. Uh, Carol, maybe you. Oh, here it is. This is 14%.
Oh, it is 14%.
So
What's
it's a little bit high.
but
Um,
what's interesting about that is the fruit is 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 large enough so that there is no dominance of the alcohol. You know, it's really in good harmony.
no, it's got a very mellow taste. You know, one of the things that I was thinking about as we were talking about the sweet wine. Um, Royal also has, if I'm not mistaken, grape juice for
That is
kids.
correct. I,
Kadem,
you know, yeah.
right?
Royal, we make we guesstimate that and we don't talk about numbers because it's privately held, but we
Right.
guesstimate that we make about 2 million cases of grape juice under the Kadem label. And Kadem grape juice is, I believe, the second largest grape juice in America, right after Welch's. Of course, its biggest sales are on the East Coast and in places like Chicago and California and Florida and Maryland and Massachusetts, etc.
And you
But
can
it's
buy it. You can buy Kadem at Costco.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've seen it at Costco, and I like grape juice. It's very sweet, but We never buy grape juice. We should get some grape juice. All right, I have to remember that. Next Costco run. Um, this has been fascinating. Now, I have to tell you that Jay has invited us to Passover, which would be great. Where are you going to be this year for Passover?
Home, home.
You're at home, so that's in New Jersey,
Yes.
right?
And I have a close friend who's a CIA graduate. And please tell people what CIA means. It doesn't mean that I'm
Culinary
spying,
Institute of America.
right? Who lives in Boca Raton, Florida, who I'm flying up, and he has his own little catering business in Boca, but he's going to cook all of Passover for us
Oh my! Oh,
in our own home.
oh, that is fabulous. And right now, the Passover tours are very popular. I know you went away last year,
That's right.
right? And
Right.
but staying at home and having Passover. Passover is my favorite holiday. It was the
What I
first.
love, yeah,
It's
what I love about yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. It's the first celebration of freedom, and for all people, not just Jewish people, but for all people. And I've always felt that way. And I also love things like that are served. I like matzah. I like matzah brie. Next week, I think we're making matzah brie with manischewitz, um, and so it's just a fun. To me, it's a great holiday, and it's a fun family time.
What's great about Passover, I say this all the time, is that other holidays require, okay, first of all, Passover is the most ecumenical. You have people of all walks of life celebrating Passover,
Yeah.
often melded families, and even churches, Catholic and Christian churches have Passover seders,
Yes.
and there are restaurants that are not kosher that have Passover themed dinners, et cetera, et cetera. But what I love about Passover is that all other Jewish holidays require uh, going to synagogue and then eating. Passover, the only thing you got to do is show up for the meal. You know, the only thing you got
Wait
to
for
do
a
is show
long
up for the.
service, then you get to eat.
That's right. And I have to tell you, the first two nights we have 15 people each evening,
How many?
and 15.
Oh my.
And the last two days of Passover, which also for Orthodox in the Orthodox community is celebrated, we have 22 for the last 2 days of Passover.
Well,
So he's got a lot of cooking to do.
a lot of cooking to do. Wow. Jay, thank you very much. Will you come back and let's do another holiday, huh?
I think, one of the nice holidays to do is the harvest holiday, which is Sukkot, which takes place in September after the New Year's holiday. And there are special foods or, traditionally foods that, are done that time of year as well. And you eat outside, and it's really a fabulous holiday. Maybe we can do it then. I don't know.
That would be great. We'll work on that. I'd like you to hold on, okay? Don't go away.
Sure.
All right.
I
Hold
won't
on.
go.
Thank you, Jay.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
Jay Buchsbaum, he's considered one of the leading experts on kosher wine and knows all about wine in general. Next week, we're having a celebration again of Passover with Manischewitz, the company that makes all kinds of different things. I think we're going to do a matzah brie. Not sure what else we're going to do. I'll tell you what a matzah brie is next week here on Mark Allen Cooks. As always, Carol, thank you. Great job. Thank you for tuning in and watching. We'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.